Welcome everybody to the Serpent Tarot for another pick a card reading. So today's pick a card reading was inspired by a viewer. I recently did an interview with Kat Crow, the creator of the Inner Mask Oracle, which you may or may not have seen. But in the lead up to that, I asked for questions for showing that oracle. And one viewer came up with a really interesting question, which we did look at, which was how we looked at it in the interview was sort of how to sort of come into your own personal sovereignty, into your own sort of personal leadership. The viewer talked about it as, how do you reach that? In a sense, the apotheosis was how they put it, of your leadership or sovereignty journey. And I said at the time I'd include it in the interview, but I really wanted to do a pick a card because I thought it's such an interesting topic. So that's what we're doing today, and thank you to the viewer that raised it. So when I think about this, when I think about sovereignty, I think about a number of things. One thing is sovereignty to me is the freedom to be true to who you are. So even if you're not someone who wants to sort of be a CEO or leader of a political party or lead a cause or a spiritual leader or any of those sort of things, what this would represent here is how you can't become truest to yourself and being able to be yourself. But for others, it will be, whether or not you have leadership sort of capacity or wishes or aims and so forth. And it could be, a thought leader, a political leader, a social leader, a creative leader, a spiritual leader. It could be any of those things, and it could play out at any level. So that's what we're looking at today. We're going to have a look at what you're born to lead in that sense, what you have already kind of had a competitive edge with, what might be your blocks or challenges. And one of the things I'm going to build into this is that in most cases, even if we're trying to be sovereign to ourselves and we're in a social framework, so we're dealing with other people, but particularly if we're wanting to lead out on something, we will have competitive views, competitors or competitive views. So we're going to have a look at your personality aspects and the aspects of the competitors, just to sort of see what kind of balance is necessary there so that you can enhance your potential in this space, and then have a look at some of your magic and mythical power that helps you with this. So that's the journey we're going on. So as always, I'll put down the numbers for the piles. You can certainly go to more than one if you feel drawn to more than one. Now, in setting up the theme for this, I'm using the Goddesses and Sirens and the Gods and Titans deck. And there's going to be a goddess and a god in each of these. But what I asked Spirit for was the sort of core part of this to help in the choice, to help you gravitate to what you want. So before I even did anything, I actually tossed a coin each time and asked whether it was a god. So whether I should take it from the Gods and Titans deck or whether from the Goddesses and Sirens or Sirens and Goddesses deck. I can never remember the title of that. Apologies to the creators of it. Yeah, it's Goddesses and Sirens, just checking that. So in the first one, the answer was no, it needed to be a goddess or siren. So I shuffled and Athena, so strategy. So there could be sort of something here about strategy, but there will be a god as well, and there are a couple of other cards to try and get a kind of sense about what your area of sovereignty is. But Athena or strategy may draw you to this reading. For the other two, the answer was yes, for it to be a god as the pinnacle point, the thing to draw you in. So for pile 2, we have Ganesha, which is about prosperity and it's about overcoming obstacles. And for pile 3, we have Thor, which is all about action and pretty much raw power. So that could be part of what it is. So if you feel drawn to one of those gods or goddesses, that may draw you to the right reading. Otherwise, pause and contemplate if you need, or go to the number, whatever works for you. And when you know what reading or readings you want to go to, as always, I've got the timestamps in the description box below, and I'll see you there. Welcome pile 1 to your reading. So as I said, depending upon whether we started with a goddess, we would then have a god as well to balance this energy out, or vice versa. And for pile 1, as I said in the introduction, we had Athena to draw you in here. So part of your sovereignty has to do with your very sharp strategic mind, your intellect. Your intellect is very, very strong. You understand and can do strategy. And I think you do strategy on a number of levels. So there's strategy, which is sort of tactics, understanding the next step, what to do and so forth, how to deal with competitors potentially, understanding the environment. Then there's what I would call big ticket strategy, which is understanding the long-term consequences on things and how to build something over a long period of time and what you go through to do that. And so it's very interesting that the god we have here is Garuda, which is about travel, which is about movement, which is about flight. and how in moving forwards, in traveling, in exploring, all of those sort of things, you can get magic. And in fact, Garuda became immortal as a result of going in search of something, in exploring in search of something. So there's something here in terms of a legacy that you take forward on your kind of strategic mind, on a big picture, and also on what is the next step. And that therefore makes it very interesting here with the Indigo Goddess deck, because we have transition and opening, and I feel like this is a cycle that occurs for you. It's part of you becoming your sovereign to yourself, has to do with always being able to strategically move. Like you are the grand strategist. So, whether it's in an organization, whether it was military strategy, whether it's political strategy, whether it's personal strategy, there is a sense you keep moving. You understand the power of change and transition. You're not frightened by endings. You're not overawed by beginnings. In fact, whenever you go from an ending, you go to a new opening, a new beginning. And you can be anywhere. With Garuda here, and we've got bloom where you're planted, it shows that you have very, what I would call sort of transferable skills. When I used to do HR, we would talk about certain skills that could go into various different industries, various different roles. You have a lot of that. You have this sort of sense, your strategic sense, your intellect, your sense of movement, your understanding of the cycles of beginning, growth, maturing, and then sort of falling away to bring the new in is all part of who you are. So you are a creature of movement, a creature of change. And your sovereignty is about that. It's about the ever moving, ever traveling, ever exploring, and the capacities, as I say, to be at home anywhere. So this could play out for some of you in, some sort of job where you are very multicultural, where you like an ambassador or something like that. It could be in sort of coming up with new product lines and that kind of thing. Or it could be, as I say, in some sort of strategic side of things, but whatever it is around career or vocation, there's a sense of movement, strategy, and adaptability. That's a big part of it. And if you are going to be a leader, it's helping others go through that change, go through endings, and then build the new. If you're a CEO, you'd be the sort of person who probably would come in just when an organisation has gone through a change, and you are bringing in that sort of sense of fertile opening and exploration. You'd very much support research and development, that kind of thing. You may also find your personal sovereignty in traveling literally in the world, in having a multicultural experience and so forth. Some of you may have been born into that and travelled a lot when you were young, for instance. And if that's the case, I think it's spirit supporting what your sort of sovereignty is. There's a sense of breaking down borders here. There's a sense of one world, or those sorts of energies, but the movement and the change and the way to make the best of things. So very strategic, very flexible, very forward thinking, very future focused, but with a kind of depth, when you can understand that transition and what is involved with that. So let's get a little bit more idea from tarot. So we're going to start firstly about, a little bit more about what you're a born ruler of, bearing in mind that there's obviously something around strategy, change, travel, exploration, new beginnings. What else can tarot tell us about your sovereignty, pile one? Queen of Pentacles reversed, Six of Swords, Five of Cups reversed, the World reversed, Five of Pentacles reversed. Okay, so one of your sovereignty aspects is that you don't get stuck and committed to just one thing. Queen of Pentacles upright kind of keeps the home fires burning, and any kind of organisation or career will be very loyal, all of those sort of things. This is not to say that you're disloyal, but the longer term security is not something that bothers you that much. You're actually very calm with the concept again of travel and of movement. So you are the change maker. You are the person who will bring in the new. You are the person who could live a very peripatetic lifestyle and not feel that you have to be in one place or only one career or whatever. That kind of exploration is there. You would stay somewhere or do something or stay in a relationship when it was the right direction for you. But if it ceases to be that, then you would find the way to transition and then go to the new. And it's not a matter of disloyalty. It's just a matter of understanding your own energy and that you're born to move, to be flexible and so forth. part of it is that you can process emotional stuff and emotional changes very, very quickly. And in doing it, the thing that is interesting here with the world reversed is that I'm getting a couple of things, and it's going to depend on who's come to this reading. One is that when you move on, it's not that you actually close the door on something. It's not like you go, well, it's all over and it's done, but it's almost like it's all over for now. And you could circle back if life took you in that direction. So people may misunderstand sometimes, as I say, and may think that you're kind of, they talk about it in workplaces, a flight risk, that you may not stay, the requisite 5 years to show loyalty or whatever it is. But the reality is if your travels brought you back again, you're quite happy to pick something up and then take it to the next level. And you don't detach too much from the people so it's sort of like if you sort of moved on, you'd still probably keep quite strong connections to people, particularly if you did feel, look, it's not the right thing for me to be focusing on now, but I may want to return to this. You're good at keeping the connections to others. So there's a kind of hang on tightly, let go lightly sort of feeling about you. I'm not sure where that statement came from, so apologies if I'm taking someone's great articulate way of expressing it, but it's sort of a phrase that I remember reading years ago and just thought it was a really evocative concept about being with something for as long as it is actually good to be with it, but being able to let go without attachment and so forth. So I think this is part of it for you, but it is the sort of sense that you could be at home anywhere, you can fit in anywhere, you can deal with the emotional stuff, but you do keep connections and you are happy to go back to something if the time is right to do that. So this is all strategic, really. This is your strategic sense. You have a very fine idea about what is meant to come next. So what is your competitive advantage? So if you were, as I say, the explorative sort of person, the new ideas person, the change person, you're going to have some others who want that sovereign title. So what's your particular competitive advantage? The Chariot, the Fool, the Nine of Pentacles, the Queen of Wands. Well, you're born to it. That's your competitive advantage. Like you're literally born to it. You can balance. You're very good at balancing the head and the heart. This is all very air, very head oriented, but nevertheless, you actually can balance that with your heart. That's what you do, keep the connections where you know that they're there. You're a born explorer. You would get bored very easily if you weren't sort of like, a lot of you might travel a lot, but if you don't travel in the world literally, you travel in your mind, you travel in liminal space. You're very comfortable with being a self-made person. You're very comfortable with being on your own when you need to. You will keep the connections to people if you think there's unfinished business or if you think that you may want to return, that kind of thing, but you're very comfortable on your own. You're very self-actualized. So you don't really have anything to prove to anybody. Yeah, it's almost as though you've kind of seen that sometimes when people stay very loyal and all that kind of thing, it may be more that they're trying to prove something and get approval. You're not interested in other people's approval. You don't want to hurt anybody. As I say, you will keep good connections, but you know what you're about. You know that you're a person who journeys. So what blocks or challenges might there be for you at the moment in your sovereignty? Wheel of Fortune reversed, Page of Cups, Hanged Man, Nine of Wands. Okay, so right now you're having to call on Athena a lot, I think. You probably want to sort of move off with Garuda, but I think there's sort of something that's being resolved. It looks like right now there's been something blocking you a bit, quite literally, with the Wheel of Fortune reversed. Now, the thing about the Wheel of Fortune is even if it's upright, you're moving into an up cycle, but then a down cycle always follows. So one way of looking at this is that you might have reached the nadir around something that is around emotional connection or an emotional offer. So a block for you at the moment might be, do you hang around somewhere because there's a love relationship, and is that what your destiny is supposed to be? You're trying to work that out. What is more important right now, the love or this sense of the momentum? Like I literally feel like the Wheel of Fortune, not so much that it's gone on a downswing, but that it's been slowed down, particularly when it's sort of covering the Chariot, which is the sense of moving forward. Like the wheels have slowed down, maybe because of something emotional. And you're trying to figure out what sacrifice is associated with this in an environment where the energy is a bit all over the shop and where it could be very sensitive about what you say around people. I do think at the moment, whatever's triggering this, you actually threaten people a bit, your sense of sureness, and you're having to be a little bit more circumspect than you would normally be. But you're trying to make a decision. So there's some emotional thing here. It could be that you're in a workplace where actually you really care about the people. Even though you have the sense it's time to move on, you're not sure, and you're not sure about what kind of impact that could have. If it's not in a workplace, if it's about a relationship, you could be really trying to say, is it too much of a sacrifice to stay, to slow down a bit, to think about the impact on the other? How does this fit with your sovereignty? So it may literally be, how is a relationship, whether it's a friendship or a love relationship, most likely a love relationship, but could be either. How is that impacting something? For some of you, I'm getting actually, it could be a child as well. It could be, you have parental responsibilities now, and it's sort of like how you balance that with what you want to do in the world and what you want to be in the world. So those sort of energies are operating. This looks more like something about a choice for you than competitors. But as I said, we do have competitors for this, whether overt or covert. So I want to explore your personal attributes and then the kind of most likely competitors, either that you have right now or that you might experience going through moving towards your sovereignty. So I'm going to use 3 decks, and I'm going to use 1 card out of each for you and then 1 card out of each for your competitor. So firstly, for you, this is just meant to be aspects of you that help your sovereignty and help you be competitive. So sharp, okay, and an aspect from this thing around your competitors, and that sort of would fit, like, the strategy with a competitor. Your most likely competitors, their attribute from this. Indigo, okay, very spiritual, all right. Then a personality aspect from another deck for you, a particular attribute that works for you. Adhesiveness, okay, the fact that you do stay friends, you're not disloyal personally, that's interesting. An attribute for your competitor. Imitation, oh, that's interesting. And then an archetype energy that works for you to your competitive advantage. Pisces, so that's the archetypal Pisces energy, a sign. And for a competitor, numb. Okay, all right. So what this tells me is what's working for you very strongly is you're very clever. Your strategy is off the charts. That's why you came to Athena. And although you move and you're always about the new, you do connect and you do keep the friends. That's what it looked like. It looked like you don't abandon people so much as you move on in situations. So, and you know how to navigate that. You have a strategy in place to navigate, partly because you understand people very, very well. Pisces is a sign. It's the 12th sign, which means in a way by the time you get round to it, you start with Aries and then you end up with Pisces. You've almost absorbed aspects of every sign. So this says that you have a very good understanding of human nature, very spiritual and psychic, all of those things, which is interesting because your competitors tend to be psychic as well. But you do it to have the connections and to have the strategy to have the connections so that you can reach this explorative, traveling, moving on, flexible sort of life and reaching that kind of sovereignty, that sort of freedom, but still having the connection. So your competitive advantage in doing this is that for all that you might need to move on in many cases to really reach your sovereignty, you can still keep the connections with people. You don't make people feel abandoned. Now, interestingly, your competitors want to be like you. They are also, there's a spiritual aspect to this. They have a similar understanding of people, but it's not as honest. Like you are honestly connected to people for all that you move on. They emulate that. They pretend a connection. In actual fact, underneath, they're quite numb. So what's driving your normal competitors in this is that their exploration, their travel, they're wanting to be the new, they're wanting to lead out on all of that sort of stuff, is to try and fill up a numb sense, a disconnection from people. They're doing it because they're not connected to people. They have some sort of psychic connection, but it's how they play it out. They're detached. Like, they truly are detached. You could potentially come across as detached, but you're not. Your competitive advantage is you're not. You really do. You have loyal friends and loyal connections for all that you move on. The people who are trying to be like you, or trying to also hold this sort of very much, travel the world type of energy and be the new, it's not because they're connected to others. It's not because they're trying to do something more spiritual. It's because they feel numb and they're looking for stimulus. So your competitive advantage here is that you're coming from a genuine wish to bring in the new and do the new and do it in a strategic and connected way. They're doing it to try and eliminate boredom or something like that. So you've got a very strong competitive advantage around the sort of people that you have around you in how this sovereignty is working out. So let's have a look at some of your personal magic that you bring to becoming sovereign in this space. Intuition, yeah, again, very, very psychic. You have a really good read on people. And you'd be an amazing diplomat. This one might want to be a diplomat, but they wouldn't be able to build the connections and be able to be all around the world in the same way. Just as an example. You also have release, yeah, the capacity to let go when you need to let go. And how that comes together as kind of practical magic for you. Pile 1. Transform your life. Transformations, yeah. You're always about transformation, the new. It's a process for you. It's very alchemical, actually. You're very alchemical. Like, if you think about the alchemy process, it starts with bringing everything together. It kind of brings it all together, burns it all out, transforms it, purifies it. But then it's a process that happens again and again as we purify ourselves. So this is coming. You are trying to purify and kind of alchemize life. And so it's a process you're going through. These ones are trying to kind of deal with a sense of absence within themselves. So you're coming from you're at the moment, the people anyway that your competitors around this, you are more the real deal about all of this. Pile 1. So what I also wanted to do is I wanted to get a couple of cards from the Mists of Babylon deck, because I feel like when we're talking about sovereignty, one of the mythologies that I really think about a lot around that kind of thing is the Arthurian legends and the once and future king and all that kind of thing. So I thought that it would be useful to also see how those sort of mythological energies operate in you achieving your sovereignty. So we have Serpent, transformation again. Here you are. You're the ultimate alchemist. This is what it's really talking about. And so it could be a very internal thing, or it could be traveling the world to do it. But you are all about that. And the way that you can do it for yourself and do it with grace and connection with others, you can actually help others with it. So you are about the alchemical process, the transformational process. And Merlin, there you go. Yeah, very, very psychic. Very, very psychic, very, very knowledgeable, can go between the worlds, but it's all about transformation. So you are the constant work in progress and development. So in a weird way, the question that the viewer asks about this, about reaching your apotheosis, it's almost to you, it's not that you can't reach an apotheosis, it's just that's almost not the point. The minute you reached it, you would have a new mountain to climb. So you're this process of evolution. That's who you are. So let's get you a couple of either stars or numerology energies to guide you on your path. Pile 1. The moon. Yeah, your emotional connection, Pisces. That's your sort of jewel in the crown. That's what's making you more competitive than the others. Genuine emotional and psychic connection. And Sagittarius, the freedom, the travel, the flight. Your emotional connection is what makes it possible for you to do the travel, to expand horizons, expand yourself, all of that kind of thing. And by doing it, I think expand others as well. But as I say, you can balance it out. That's why you can reach this. You have a genuine emotional and spiritual connection to others. Okay, so to finish off, I wanted to also look at mythology and sort of like sovereignty from another point of view and use the mythic oracle. So this is Greek and Roman gods and goddesses. So just a final sort of like description of a nature of your sovereignty that you are developing in this life, pile one. Wow, Hades, death. Now, remember we had endings and beginnings. This is not a bad thing. This is about being able to let go of what is no longer necessary and move into what is new. So it's part of the transition. This is why you're the grand alchemist. In fact, it's interesting. They look quite similar, don't they? So this is you can go into the depths, the scorpionic depths. You can be in the underworld if necessary, all of that sort of thing. Because you are comfortable with the change. You don't see it as a loss, and you don't see it as a death in the sense of something ending. You see it as a transition point, a transformation point. So very, very powerful, very, very deep energy, very, very psychically connected. But there are others around that want whatever way you're doing this, but they're doing it for a very, very different reason. And as long as you understand that, you'll know what your advantage is. So I hope that resonates for you, pile one. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. If you care to share in the comments, as always, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile two, to your reading. So you came to the reading with Ganesha, which is about, making sort of like bounty, good luck or whatever, getting past obstacles, all those sort of things. And the goddess energy that balances this and is part of your sovereignty is Mart. So the Egyptian goddess of justice, the one that when you are in the underworld, your heart is weighed against a feather to decide whether or not you are welcomed in the underworld and then into reincarnation and so forth. So very interesting here, an energy of having a cause. There's a cause for you. Justice is important. The truth is important. Balance is important. And being able to get past obstacles. So I think many of you will have a view of that, whether it's in your most personal relationships or whether it's in your workplace or a cause or a political or social matter, spiritual matter. Your sovereignty comes from having a very core sense of justice and working out what are the obstacles to that. So you're a bit of a warrior, I think. Now, the interesting energy here is that on the surface, it looks very much of action and of the mind. I always think with justice, some of you may literally work in the legal system in some way or in organisations, and you're sort of like looking at a kind of regulatory matters or things like that. It could play out like that. But beyond that, this feels very much like action, fire energy and the mind, the intellectual energy, but the underneath engine room of your sovereignty and why you are so good at this is very emotional. It's like really understanding what is beneath, because we have the depths under the surface. You would be able to, like literally with Mart and with that, you could work in the legal system. As I say, you could be an investigator, you could be a prosecutor, you could be a defender, you could be someone like, it could be an investigative journalist. There's a sort of a sense here of finding what's under the surface, but if it's not playing out in a role like that, then I think you do get to the core of this and you do get to justice because you go to the depths. You don't just look at the surface, and you're very connected spiritually with Sister Moon, guided to the light. You can also see in dark places where the opportunities are, like what the obstacles are and where the opportunities are. So I think that you are some form of, social fighter or problem solver. Like you would be a problem solver in any workplace, and you would be able to understand what was really going on. This could play out in very sort of psychological sorts of careers or psychological sort of understandings as well, to get to the depths and to bring people out. You could be a healer in some ways, but if you are, it's about healing injustice, healing the obstacles and the barriers so that people can actually find their opportunities, be guided to the light, surface their own powers. So you could also be, a very good coach, mentor, teacher, that kind of thing. There's something in you, though, that is about bringing the right balance back and truly understanding what's going on. That's the core part of your sovereignty. So let's look at it in a bit more detail. We're going to firstly ask Tarot for a bit more of an idea about what this sovereignty is. Then we're going to look at where do you have a competitive edge? And then we're going to have a look at what blocks or challenges you're right now around achieving this sort of heightened level of this sovereignty for yourself. So a little bit more about how the actual sovereignty manifests. Four of Pentacles, the Chariot reversed, Two of Swords, Knight of Cups, the Moon. Okay, this is this, this is this, and this is this. So it's really kind of emphasizing what I've been talking about. So firstly, you know where the blockages are and where things have been slowed down. What are the obstacles? What has got stuck materially or in terms of energy and so forth? What is slowing down the Chariot? And you know that whatever it is not right, because the Chariot upright is kind of destiny. So when it's reversed, there's something getting in the way of the destined or the proper sort of creation of things. So I think this is like Mart knowing that, and this is Mart here. What is the decision? What decision needs to be made? What balance needs to be brought to it? What intellectual understanding needs to be brought to it to work out what is the obstacle? And within that, what is the opportunity? Emotionally and otherwise, what offering can come out of this? So you would be the sort of person who every kind of problem or whatever, you would look at it also as an opportunity or as a blessing. You'd be the sort of person who would probably say that thing that, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. And like 9 times out of 10, you'll be right. I mean, maybe 1 time out of 10 something unfair happens, but then you'll have a real sense of that and move forward anyway if that's the case. But by and large, you can see what the decision is that brings the opportunity, and then you can go to the depths. You're not afraid of the depths. You're not afraid of what lurks underneath. So again, if you were like in some sort of, so here's an example. Say you were working in some sort of criminal justice system and you were an investigator. You would be the type of person who would probably be a forensic psychologist. You would go to the depths to understand the motivations under things and to sort of see how that then plays out, like how the problem, the issue, the crime, whatever it might be, has played out because of what's going on in the depth. So that's just an example, but this is this sort of like keen balance and forensic sort of intelligence with an emotional connection to how you break through the obstacles. So let's see what is your competitive advantage, because in any of these things you will have competitors for this throne. So what is your competitive advantage at the moment, pile 2? 3 of Pentacles, 10 of Wands, 10 of Cups, King of Pentacles reversed. Okay. You've got good friends around you, or the capacity to find good connections and good friendships. You've got a good foundation in what you're doing. I would say for most of you, if this is playing out in a career, you've already started to build the foundation of it. But you certainly can find collaborators, and you certainly can work out like a kind of a new restructuring of something if necessary. And you're hardworking as hell. Like you don't give up. You're indefatigable, actually, and like when many others would not be able to keep going and break through it and get to the core, you keep going because you've got a very strong sense about what needs to be built and how to make it a healthy thing to build from. You've also got either very strong family connections, very strong sort of love, very strong emotional energies, or you will do anything for those that you care about. So there's a really strong heart energy to all of this, and you don't worship at the altar of spent power. Like you're ready to take it. This actually looks like there's someone who maybe was a bit like you, but has now got a bit corroded and a bit corrupted, and you can see that and you know it. So you don't revere the past just because it's past. You look to the future. And as I say, you're indefatigable. So let's see. And for those of you that are somehow dealing with injustices or whatever, you don't blink when you see corruption or whatever. You'll get to the core of it. So what challenges or blocks you at this point, pile 2? The Tower reversed. The 8 of Swords reversed. The 7 of Pentacles. The 6 of Cups. Okay, so I think for most of you, however this is playing out, and as I say, could be playing out in career, personal relationships, academia, whatever it is, wherever it is, You're in a situation right now where you can see what the obstacles are. You can see the way through. You can see what is right. You've kind of understood it, but you also understand, because you go to the depths, that whatever situation you're in at the moment is not quite ready to change. There's actually some good that needs to be salvaged in this. It's not everything should fall, but so there's something worth investing in, and for that reason you have to be slow and steady, which is not necessarily what you really want to do. But there's a sort of sense about it's on the precipice of something happening, but it's not there yet, and there's something very emotional that you're protecting. For some of you, it could be around family, could be around love, and it is worth protecting. So I think you're at a point where if you were able to sort of step back from the emotional impact of this, you would just go, something needs to really shift, something really needs to change in some way. And in doing that and bringing that through, you really come into your power. But you're also recognizing that something about what's going on at the moment, there's something that needs to be preserved as well. And this is where Mart really comes in, because like Ganesha just wants to push through the obstacles. I think Mart wants it to be balanced, and I think that's playing out at the moment, but it's operating as a bit of a block on you moving forward to the next stage. I think it's a temporary block, pile 2. So what could be happening is, in this change, there could, particularly with the King of Pentacles coming up reverse, there could definitely be some sort of competitor or person who's sort of like pushing back against what you're trying to achieve in your sovereignty. So what we want to do now is look at personal characteristics you have that help you with your sovereignty, and personal characteristics that your competitor or the pushback person, whatever it is, has that you need to be aware of. So I'm just going to put down, I'm using 3 decks. I'm going to put down 1 card for you and 1 card for your main competitor. Let's put it that way, in whatever that means to you. And then we'll, from 3 different decks, and then we'll have a look at what it means. So firstly, for you from the first deck, Africa. Okay. So this may be sort of something about connecting to those sorts of places. There could be like traveling to those sort of places, or it could be that there are personality characteristics, cultural characteristics there that are somehow how you can bring all this together and make it happen. There might be, it might also be that you're aware of similar situations. There's something about one or more of those countries, those cultures, something like that actually matters to you. It might be just the sense of justice. It could be for some of you social justice and so forth. For your competitor, Capricorn. Okay, they're very much the powers of the world. We'll get into this in more detail. I'm going to get another personality characteristic for you that helps for you. Hearing. Okay, and what your competitor has personality-wise. Olfaction, sleuthing. Okay, all right. Okay. And then an archetype energy that you have that is part of your sovereignty. Sagittarius, so freedom, philosophy, wanting others to be free, travel. And your competitor, fire. Okay, you're quite similar, I think, to your competitors. And that's maybe not unusual. But I think for you, there is some, I think Africa here is kind of, it could be for some of you literally. It could be literally that there's something about one of those sort of countries or whatever that is going to be key to you reaching your sovereignty. But more generally, as I say, I think it might be that for you, this is about a philosophical issue about what is fair and what is just. So there's a very social justice energy to this, I think. And understanding things like sort of the impact of race and culture and all of those sort of things. And you are very alert and clear about that. You hear very well. So when you are getting to the depths and understanding something, you hear what others are saying. You know, there's almost a sort of a sense of you can hear across, you know, political or cultural or language, you know, boundaries in some way. And you want to bring it towards something progressive, freedom-oriented and creative. Now, your competitors are also very fiery, very creative, but they are using this. They're using this sort of thing forensically in sleuthing. They use it to try and find the weakness in the other. Like, I feel like you're trying to remove obstacles that will help you come to a just outcome that is freeing and that hears everybody and brings a proper balance. Your competitors go, I'm going to kind of be powerful in the world, and I'm going to do the detective work I need, and then I'm going to create an outcome. So they're more likely to use information to their advantage, whereas you try and use the information to everyone's advantage. And I think that's the thing. You need to understand they're quite ruthless. And they have very similar sort of abilities. They're just using them in a different way. And you would be looking to free everybody. You're focusing that. They would use a lot of charisma. They probably have quite a bit of charisma. So it's interesting. You're in quite a high stakes situation, I think, most of the people who've come to pile 2, if you've come to the right reading. So let's have a look at what magic you bring to it then. So given, because I think, this is quite a, they're similarly skilled. They're not coming from as pure a place though, and I think in the end the universe tilts towards justice, and Mart is definitely saying that, but nevertheless you wouldn't want to underestimate them. So magic that you bring to your personal sovereignty. Guardian, okay, so firstly I think because you are doing this for the right reasons, you have a very powerful guardian or guide. You may also be someone who is that for other people. These people over here wouldn't be. They're more like mercenaries actually, and you're more like a freedom fighter. Okay, another piece of magic. Respect. You command respect, and you respect all, and you listen to all. It is actually part of your superpower. They're listening to find advantage. You're listening to find connection and to have a good outcome. And then how this comes together as practical magic for you. Oh, this is interesting. This came up for one of the other ones, transformation. So you want to cause transformation and change. You don't want more of the same. They want more of the same, really. They just want the keys to the kingdom. They don't care whether the kingdom is corrupt, just as long as they get to have the keys to the kingdom. You want to change things. And that is part of your magic, because in the end it's a more powerful and a more pure thing. So when I think about sovereignty, the other thing I think about is certain mythologies, and one in particular that I think about is the sort of Arthurian legends. So I thought it might be good to get just a couple of Arthurian legend figures or energies to sort of connect to that mythic side of the kind of once and future king sort of idea for your sovereignty, pile 2. So we get Bridget, birth, okay. Radiance. Well, and I think you are very radiant. You want to birth something new into being. I think you're also protective. Some of you may be guarding and looking after in all of this, family outcomes, children, that kind of thing, something very precious in that way. And you will have all the sort of power of your ability sort of doing that. And the Mists of Avalon, boundaries, illusion. So this is of course the ladies of the lake going to Avalon. Avalon is a mysterious place. I think this is you being able to get to the depths. This is you being able to understand things. I think you do that better. This is much more, your competitors, it's much more kind of like just looking, as I say, for like evidence and, sort of finding the incriminating text or something. For you, you're going to the depths of what's really going on, and you have a much more mysterious sort of energy to help you. Okay. So let's get you just a little bit of either astrological or numerological guidance as well. The moon. I think that came up for one of the others as well. So your psychic ability, your emotional connection. This is one of your real things against the competitor here is there is a true emotional depth to what you do. Your competitors, as I say, are much more creatures of the matrix. And air. Yeah, the justice, the making sure things that are kind of like pure and thought and communication and so forth, and big sky thinking. All of these things will help you going to the depths, but also being able to take it to the heights. This all balances out for you. So to finish off, I just want to use one other mythical sort of pantheon, which is the sort of Greek and Roman gods and goddesses, to see one other aspect of your sovereignty which you could manifest in this life. Pile 2. Hecate, the crossroads. So you know when the main choices need to be made. This is kind of why we had the Two of Swords there, and I think Mart has a lot to do with this. You know when choices need to be made to shift things along. Whereas, as I say, some of your competitors probably wouldn't push a choice if it wasn't advantageous to them. Hecate is also an incredibly powerful witch energy. You're very powerful on that level. And you can go to the depths and be safe in the depths because you have a very strong moral fibre. So I think this is about using your personal magic and really looking at those personal magic energies because they're very important to this. But I think you know when something has to be done. And I think you know right now that whatever you're involved in, as we saw with the block, you're not quite at the crossroads, but you're coming to the crossroads. So it's being in preparation for that, listening, thinking across boundaries and borders, thinking inclusively, thinking about the future. All of these things will help you, pile 2. So I hope that resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. If you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile 3, to your reading. So you came to the reading with Thor, and as I said in the introduction, if that's what sort of drew you to it, there's a real sense of action, adventure, drama, power. I always think of Thor, with thunderstorms and all that kind of thing. So like a real sort of sense of sort of revolutionary, evolutionary energy, action, power, and all those sort of things. The interesting thing is that the goddess energy, sort of balancing it as part of your sovereignty, is Vesta, which is all about the home and the hearth and what is sacred and what is pure. So there's a kind of an interesting amalgamation in you between the wish for action, power, and change and energy, all of those sorts of things, with also a sense of security and stability and what is sacred. So a sacred purpose for your power, but also a grounded power that is able to have a home and a hearth. And it's interesting because I think that the reason that is why that balance is important is because when I'm looking here with the Indigo Goddess deck, you are meant to adventure, you are meant to get out in the world, you are meant to be seen in the world, you could travel for work, so this is why having a good home base is part of this, and almost being able to be at home anywhere as well if necessary. So there's something in that, there's something very dynamic, but you're also meant to be seen and known. It's got spotlight, rich and famous, lucky break, star power, influencer, entertainer. So this dramatic sort of energy, there's something about you that's meant to be seen in the world. For you to fully go into your sovereignty, at some level, you need to be seen. You can't just sit at home and do it from there. You need to be seen. Or if you're sitting at home, you need to be reaching out through social media or something like that. For you to fully come into your dramatic power potential, then you need to have this sense of adventure and be seen and out in the world in some way. And that, it doesn't have to be on the world stage. It could be that to get this balance and sort of feel like you're really enjoying your life, it's sort of you do a bit of amateur dramatic theatrics or something, while sort of then pursuing something that is more around supporting your home in some way. But I think for most of you you need to be seen and known, and you're meant to be seen and known, and there's something dramatic. Like some of you, it may be very performative, but you'll also travel a lot for it, I think, the very least sort of mentally, but part of your sovereignty is that you also can be at home anywhere, or that you have a very stable home, or you will prize a very stable home so that you can do this. So let's get a little bit more idea about this. So we're going to start firstly with a little bit more of an idea about what your sovereignty would really look like. We're then going to look at what your competitive edge is at the moment, and we'll also look at what blocks you could have. So as I say, of all the readings so far, you look like the one who's most likely to be a celebrity or seen or performative in some way. That's tied up with this. So let's see a little bit more about what this sovereignty is all about. Two of Swords reversed, 10 of Wands reversed, 3 of Cups reversed, 9 of Cups, 8 of Cups reversed. Okay, there's a lot about love, connection, emotional energy, and kind of like coming through that which maybe hasn't working out what to let go of and what not to let go of to reach what you really want, the desire that you have. There's something about choice, and that makes perfect sense because, as I say, those two cards together are almost like diametrically opposite. Like they're not really, but like in the sense that one is about travel, adventure, power, effect, and the other is about being at home and sacred and the quiet and so forth. Part of your power is that you don't choose between the two. Part of your sovereignty is that you somehow assimilate both, and you work out how each actually removes some of the burden of the other. So this energy, this dynamic energy, relieves any burden that would come from hearth and home, and your hearth and home security relieves some of the burden that comes from this sort of very dynamic energy. So you have that well balanced, and you are part of what you're doing, and I think part of what you're going to show in the world and part of what your adventure is, what you're really looking for, is determining what is the true wish as opposed to those things that linger but aren't. So you could be sort of someone who helped others around relationship issues. You could be an example of that, of someone who, having sort of maybe had a tumultuous and dramatic sort of love life, you finally find the one. So, you know, that could be that kind of story around you. But there's a sense here of on one hand, emotional issues, like confronting those, but also using that to refine what you really do want, how you want to balance this off. And I think it is kind of the one side, you know, like not wanting to be too connected or too tied to anything, and then on the other side wanting to have a grounded connection. It's like, how do you balance those off to get it right? So I think you become an example of it to other people, and you know, maybe someone who teaches or helps others around this sort of thing, because you've kind of had to work it out yourself because you're both these things. So let's see, you know, what's your competitive advantage around this sort of, like, I think celebrity kind of energy, I have to say, in one level or another. What's your competitive advantage? Knight of Wands, Eight of Wands reversed, Death reversed, the Empress reversed. Okay, right now you're tilting to Thor, I have to say. And that might be exactly, I mean, Spirit may be saying that's exactly where you need to do that at the moment, that later maybe you'll work out the emotional side. So you might actually need to be letting go of something that held you back too much emotionally right now, because right now you're not making the choices about the hearth and home. And that's a competitive advantage for you at the moment. Right now, you're sort of moving, traveling, being action-oriented. You're not being precipitous about it. Like you do have a little bit of a break on yourself when you need to, because the Knight of Wands, like the Knight of Swords, can kind of like go at it and then work out, oh, I should have thought about that before I did that. But with the Eight of Wands here reversed, you have a sort of internal break, so you're not overdoing it, but you're emphasizing Thor more than you're emphasizing Vesta at this point in time. And for some reason, that's right. It may well tilt in another direction at another time. So I think that as I say, you use these things to balance each other off. So it's almost like right now, there was something maybe emotionally that was difficult that you're in the process of letting go, and you know that you have to therefore not focus on that so much. So you're using the action to relieve the burden of something emotional. And your capacity to toggle between the two is your competitive advantage. So let's see what might be blocking you at the moment, if that's the case. The High Priestess, the Magician reversed, the Ten of Pentacles, Judgment reversed. Okay. The interesting thing about you, as I say, is I think that you will be known in some way. And that's going to be part of your sovereignty. When you've really achieved that, you will be known for it. I think that at the moment, the block you have is you're very focused on the material outcome. And it's not necessarily bad to do that. It indicates that you will do very well materially. But there is a hell of a lot of spiritual stuff behind this that you're not fully looking at. In fact, you almost have made it a mystery to yourself. You have a sense of a calling, but you're not following it at the moment. And I think it might be because, as I say, you know your calling is the balance of these two, but at the moment you're focusing more on the exploration because you're building something. So in a way, your focus to build something is a block for your full sovereignty. when you understand your calling and when you understand the power that you have, particularly spiritually, psychically, all that kind of thing, you're going to remove a lot of the blocks. You're going to almost understand what it was that went on, I think, emotionally that is actually blocking this energy a bit. And this is the sacred side of it. So you are tilting towards Thor at the moment, but that's because it's the quickest and most assured direction towards material outcomes. And it's not that that's bad, but it is blocking the full sovereignty. And when you have done that, I think that's when you start to kind of go back into this energy. And that's when you're going to truly understand underneath all of this is a spiritual ability. So let's have a look at this in terms of like you and the competitor. So when we're talking about sovereignty, we nearly always have at one or more times in our lives competitors. They could be peers, they could be literal competitors, they could be overt, they could be covert. What I want to do is use 3 different kind of personality or archetype type of decks to see what your competitive advantage is and what their competitive advantage is. So I'm just going to put down a card for you and a card for them from each of these decks and then talk about what I think it's saying. This could be a literal competitor you have at the moment, or this could be one that you're destined to have as you move towards your sovereignty. So for you, okay, plastic, perfect, cosmetic surgery, okay. And for your competitor, indigo, third eye, wise, spiritual, okay, all right, this is interesting. Then a personality aspect. Secretiveness for you, and for your competitor, sight. Okay, this is very interesting. Okay, let's get the archetype energy. So for you, high roller, wow. You are very... This is not necessarily bad, but it is an interesting energy and why you've got to get these things into balance. For your competitor, visionary. Okay, all right. So this is the one. Now, it's very interesting because I do think that there's something about celebrity being seen or whatever, and that brings this whole other level of complexity. But this is the one of the 3 readings where I feel like you are the real deal, but you're not presenting yourself that way. And possibly your competitor is presenting themselves. They are a real deal as well, okay? Particularly around the spiritual psychic stuff. But this is the stuff that you're blocking that at the moment, but you're going to have to open it up because your competitor has that as well, okay? Whether you know this person now or not. At the moment, where you tend to sort of like win out is being able to present something, present yourself. It's like the celebrity. I'm not feeling like this is negative, but I'm feeling like there's a kind of very curated way that you would present yourself to people, and you would keep a lot of your personal stuff very secret, very private. But you come across as this high risk, high stakes, exciting person, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there is your real sovereignty is also in the sort of sacred, and that's not what you're presenting at the moment. And so I think this is around right now. And I think maybe the thing that triggers you to understand you have to bring this up is that you're going to have a competitor who's very spiritual, who has the sight, very visionary. And you are as well too, but it's only when you come up against this person that you actually have to start to look at that. So I don't know, it's very specific, but it's interesting. Because the other sort of readings, it's more that the competitor is not quite what you could be, but this is someone who could be what your sovereignty is as well. Though I feel overall that if you both reach your sovereignty, it would be different. I think this person would be primarily about the spiritual. I think you're about the balance of both, but this is going to trigger you into having to think beyond the dramatic, the performative, all of that sort of stuff into what is sacred as well. So they are in a way a competitor that will ultimately probably be a positive for you, but it's an interesting energy to think about what is sacred to you. And the more that you could think about that now, the more you're going to bring that power up. So, and it doesn't mean you have to show it to everybody. You can keep it very private, but yes, there's something where that's going to become an issue. So let's have a look therefore a bit about your personal magic. because I think this is important. You are very powerful, but you're not really using it at the moment. So let's see what you would have in your kit bag if you chose to start to focus on it. Moon magic. Okay, so pay attention to the cycles of the moon, to the emotional sort of core of things. There's something in that. Maybe plan your strategy around the sort of various phases of the moon. We also have demon. Okay, so the demon, that's not a demon as in sort of Christian demon. It's about the higher self. So I think you've almost cut yourself off from your higher self at the moment. This is the thing that's cutting off the full balance. If you reconnect to your higher self, and you know one of the ways to do that is think about what you wanted to be when you were a child, because when we're a child, we're most closely connected to our higher self, and our higher self kind of has a sense of the ultimate sovereignty of ultimately what we could do with our life. So, you know, if you were a child who wanted to be Superman and fly, there could be something about speed and freedom and protecting others that is part of what your higher self wants. If you were somebody who wanted to be, I don't know, a fairy or something, you might, the magic and the sort of sense of mystery. I mean, like think about, you know, or a particular animal. I wanted to be a lion. So it's sort of think about those things, because that will get you in contact with that, get you back in contact with the power that you have. And then let's look at a practical magic application of your sovereignty, pile 3. Time for play. Okay, yeah, this is a sense like get back to what it was like as a child. It's all a bit earnest about just acting and succeeding and building the empire, and you're going to do that, but you also need to have that sense of the sacred in the home. And like when you were a child, you know, you could connect to your higher self, you could play, you could explore, you could be dramatic and fun, and really work out who you are. So I think there's just that sort of, you've got a bit detached from the Vesta side of things. But you'll get your sovereignty more if you get reattached to that, so to speak. So one of the things that I think about when I think about sovereignty is I think about the Arthurian legends, the once and future kings. So I thought it could be useful also to pull a couple of cards from the Mists of Avalon deck to get a little bit more information about your sovereignty as well, using that mythology. So for you, we get the White Spring, protection, energy, healing. I feel like there's a get into nature energy here as well too. You're so dramatic, so performative, so charismatic, all of those sort of things, but you need to find a clearing place for yourself, a sacred place for yourself. You'll get more energy that way. This is what your competitor potentially has an advantage over you at the moment, because they're more in touch with that. But I do think ultimately, as I say, you could be more than them because you could have both. But yeah, you need to kind of find yourself a place. And Morgan Le Fay, Prophecy Fay. Yeah, see, you're very powerful. But you've maybe even thought there's something wrong with that, you know, because Morgan Le Fay, you know, she had a bit of a heavy rap in the Arthurian legends, you know. She I think was the mother of Mordred, all of that kind of thing. So there may be a side of you that almost doubts that, who you're actually a little bit worried about that, but it is part of who you are. And it's a very, very powerful spiritual psychic energy for you. I just think you're suppressing it. Let's get you some astrology or numerology to help you as well. Earth. Yeah, there's something about nature. Get out into nature. Maybe that's all you need to ground and feel the sort of sacred, because you're kind of up in the air and dramatic and fiery, and that's wonderful, but you also need to ground this energy. And Saturn return. Okay, so that's interesting as well too. Saturn return comes a number of times in your life. The first time is usually between 28 and 30, and it's where we start to really know who we are. We come into our sovereignty. For some of you, you may be coming up to your Saturn return, or if you're a bit younger than that, when you are, this could be a real time when this comes into balance. If you're already past your Saturn return, then think about what happened then, because I think that this connecting again to your demon or your higher self, there's sort of something about understanding what the mature balance is. So, and it's about putting down roots a bit and actually sort of, as I say, having a sacred, grounded energy. For some of you, you may be coming up to your second Saturn return, which is usually between about 58 and 60. That's often where people retire and where they can be their true self in a more free way. So this might be a new thing altogether, and you may have been spending much of your life traveling, being dramatic, but you may be coming up to a time where now you can actually put down some roots, and that's when you really bring things into balance. So it really depends whether you're in that sort of time frame. If not, this is about maturity. This is about understanding the mature sovereign you is a balance of both of these things. Okay, so to finish up, I just want to get you one other mythology to think about as part of your sovereignty. So using sort of Greek and Roman legends, the pantheon. Let's see what we get for you. Now, I cannot pronounce this correctly, I'm sure. It's sort of Nemesis, I presume, all about inspiration. So I think this is Spirit trying to tell you where you're going to find inspiration. I think it's getting back to almost a sense of who you were as a child, getting back to what would have been a sacred hearth and home for you, getting back to your kind of magical ability and believing in that. This will all inspire you. Because what might be inspiring you at the moment is more the material world you're dealing with and how to be seen and celebrated and successful. And there's, Spirit isn't saying there's anything wrong with that. It's just saying that there's another part of you that would even amplify this more and bring you to your true apotheosis of your sovereignty, as I was saying in the introduction, by also including the Vesta sort of energy and the emotional sort of like connections and so forth. So there's something that could be inspiring for you, and I think it's in play, it's in a place for yourself, it's connecting to your higher self, it's connecting to your magical ability. So I hope that resonates for you, Pile 3. I think you've got a lot of potential, but I think you're underestimating yourself. Even though you may think it's all very dramatic and performative and wonderful, and you are really good with that, there's so much more as well. So I hope that resonates. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. If you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings.